Hello everyone, and welcome. I'm excited to kick off our session today. We're diving into the fascinating world of education through the lens of EDES 113. On this first slide, you'll see the title, An Introduction to the Study of Education, with a focus on the history of education in selected international contexts, specifically the USA. Over the course of this presentation, we'll explore key developments, historical perspectives, and how education has evolved over time in the United States. So, let's get started and enjoy the journey into the history of education. Today, I want to talk about the upcoming revision sessions, which will take place from Thursday and Friday through to Monday. These sessions are an important opportunity for you to review your work and clarify any doubts. Also, this week, we will be releasing the assignment marks, so keep an eye out for those. It's important to check your scores and ensure everything is in order. Next week, the DPs will be published, and you should check the Student Central portal for these updates. The DPs, or definitive passes, are crucial because they determine your eligibility to write the upcoming exams. We'll be using registers to figure out who's eligible for the DP and exam entry. Remember, students need to have a DP of 40% or above to qualify for the exam. This percentage is based on a conversion from the UKZN system, out of 100, and it's important to note that attendance also plays a role in this determination. If you have any questions about the DP or require assistance, you can reach out to Yolanda Mather at Uxin, AC, ZA. Finally, keep an eye out for announcements, as they will contain important updates and information. Staying informed is key to staying on track. Let's take a look at how the grading breakdown works for this course. The test is worth 50 marks, with a weight of 20%, so it's calculated as 38 divided by 50, then multiplied by 20%. Similarly, the assignment is also out of 50 marks, but it carries a weight of 30%, so again, 38 divided by 50, multiplied by 30%. The exam, on the other hand, is scored out of 100, and it accounts for 50% of your final grade. The exam scope, which we'll cover at the end of this lecture, plus any additional details, will be published on Learn 2026, so make sure to check there for updates. I want to wish everyone the best of luck for the exam. Stay focused and confident. Also, for those of you with missing assignment marks, please see me with your evidence, like the marked assignment, so we can resolve any issues. Lastly, there's a module announcement regarding DP calculation, which I'll explain further as we go along. Today, I want to talk about the exam script. This is a crucial part of our assessment process because it guides how we evaluate understanding and knowledge. It's not just about the questions themselves, but also about how those questions are structured and what they aim to reveal. A well-designed exam script ensures that we cover all the key concepts we've discussed and that it aligns with our learning objectives. It helps us identify areas where students excel and where they might need more support. Remember, the exam script is a reflection of the overall course goals, so thorough preparation here is essential. By paying attention to these details, we can make sure our assessments are fair, comprehensive, and truly indicative of student learning. Let's take a closer look at the USA. As one of the key players in the global landscape, the United States has a significant influence in many areas, from economics and technology to culture and diplomacy. Its vast size and diverse population make it a unique case study for understanding how various factors come together to shape a nation. When we talk about the USA, we're also referring to its innovation and leadership in industries like Silicon Valley, which drives technological advancements worldwide. Additionally, its political and economic systems set trends that many other countries observe and sometimes emulate. Connecting this to the overall theme of our presentation, the USA exemplifies how a country's history, policies, and cultural dynamics can influence its global role. It's a clear example of how internal factors and external relationships work hand in hand to shape national identity and international positioning. Let's take a moment to reflect on some of the key figures in American history, like Sir William Johnson, Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, and Samuel Adams. These founders played crucial roles in transforming the United States from a collection of colonies into a civilized nation, shaping its politics and establishing its constitution. They helped the country gain independence from Britain and Europe, and in doing so, they forged a distinct American identity. Today, the U.S. has two major political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. Currently, the president is Donald Trump, a Republican. The political structure is designed to reflect a diverse population, and you'll notice that the majority of Americans are white, followed by Hispanics, Asians, and African Americans. There's also an increasing number of mixed-race individuals, which highlights the growing diversity in the country. Religion-wise, Christianity remains the dominant faith, but we're also seeing a rise in the number of atheists. The population exceeds 300 million people, and the country is located in the Western Hemisphere, specifically in North America. The U.S. consists of 50 states, including Hawaii, as well as territories like Puerto Rico and Samoa. Overall, the demographics and cultural makeup of the United States continue to evolve, making it a dynamic and complex nation that plays a significant role on the global stage. Let's take a look at the U.S. education history in relation to POTUS, or Presidents of the United States. This slide highlights how the educational backgrounds of presidents have evolved and what that tells us about the broader trends in American society. You'll notice that many early presidents had limited formal education, often due to the era's circumstances, but they still played crucial roles in shaping the nation. As we move through history, there's a noticeable shift toward more formalized and diverse educational experiences among presidents. This progression reflects the growing importance placed on higher education and specialized training, which increasingly influenced leadership qualities and decision-making. Connecting this to our overall theme, understanding the educational backgrounds of our leaders provides insight into how education shapes leadership and policy over time. It also underscores the evolving relationship between education and national identity. Public schooling in the United States actually dates back to the 1600s, particularly in the New England colonies like Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. One of the earliest examples is the Boston Latin School, founded in 1635, and just a year later, Harvard University was established in 1636. These institutions laid the groundwork for formal education in America. However, it's important to recognize that education during this early period was not accessible to everyone. Slaves, who were brought to the U.S. through the African diaspora, were not granted any formal education. The same was true for Native Americans and women. Education was largely reserved for white men. The main goal of education at this time was to promote the Christian religion, and instruction was conducted in English. As time went on, in the early 1700s, private schooling began to emerge. This was partly a response to protests against religious-based education, as some groups wanted to focus more on secular studies. During the 1700s to 1900s, Latin schools, which primarily served the wealthy, evolved into what we call American academies. These institutions offered more advanced education to those who could afford it. By the 1800s, the U.S. had expanded significantly, with 14 states establishing their own constitutions. It was only after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, which freed the slaves, that we saw a significant increase in literacy among African Americans. Education started to become more controlled by the government and was aimed at being free from religious bias, ensuring access regardless of gender or social class. By 1910, the literacy rate among African Americans had climbed to about 70%. This progress highlights how education gradually became more inclusive and accessible, shaping the foundation of our current system. Overall, understanding this history helps us appreciate the ongoing journey toward equal educational opportunities for all. Catholics were opposing the common education school system at the time, which led to a continued effort to establish private schools across the United States. This was part of a broader resistance to the standardization of public education. In the 1950s, racial segregation in schools was supported by the Supreme Court, reflecting the deeply ingrained racial inequalities of that era. Whites generally received a higher quality of education, while African Americans, Native Americans, and Hispanics were often subjected to low-quality schooling, which reinforced social and economic disparities. However, in 1956, the Supreme Court declared racial segregation in schools unconstitutional, marking a pivotal moment in the fight for civil rights. This legal change was a catalyst for further activism, as the civil rights movement and other political protests pushed for a more equitable and progressive education system throughout the early and mid-1900s. Moving into the 1960s, the focus expanded beyond civil rights to strengthening the nation's economy through education. Several important acts were passed, including initiatives in international education, vocational training, and manpower development. These efforts aimed to prepare a skilled workforce and maintain the U.S.'s position as a major economic power. Overall, the history of U.S. education reflects a journey from inequality and resistance toward progress and modernization, driven by social justice and economic needs. Despite the progress made, in the late 1800s, education was still largely a privilege of the wealthy. It wasn't accessible to everyone, which was a significant issue. That's when activists for civil and human rights stepped up, fighting hard for all children to have the chance to go to school. Their efforts paid off, and eventually, free elementary and secondary schooling became a reality. This movement led to schools becoming compulsory for children between the ages of 6 and 16, at least in states like Massachusetts and New York. Over time, other states followed suit in the late 1800s and into the 1900s. This shift marked a major turning point in U.S. education history, moving toward greater equality and access for all children. It's an important part of the broader story of how education evolved to serve everyone, not just the privileged few. In the 1980s, we saw the federal government express concerns about low academic achievements in public schools. This led to efforts to centralize the schooling system through curriculum and assessment standards, aiming to improve overall performance. Moving into the 1990s, the U.S. education system became more developed and was strongly influenced by the principles of a democratic constitution, emphasizing equal access and public accountability. As we entered the 21st century, there was a notable surge in enrollment and graduation rates at both secondary and higher education levels. The government also increased federal funding to support students pursuing higher education, making college more accessible for many. During this period, many new colleges and universities were established. Today, there are around 600 of them across the country. Over time, control of education gradually shifted more to individual states, which now manage their own systems, including finances, curriculum choices, staff hiring, and overall administration. Understanding this historical progression helps us see how the U.S. education system has evolved from centralized efforts to a more decentralized, state-controlled framework, shaping the diverse and dynamic landscape we see today. The 10th Constitutional Amendment of 1791 was a key turning point because it established that public schooling would be controlled by each individual state. This means there are no national frameworks that set curricula or directly control education across the country. Instead, the United States follows a decentralized education system, which is quite different from many other countries. This decentralization allows for a lot of variation. What's taught, how schools are run, and funding can differ significantly from state to state and even district to district. Local communities have a lot of control over education policy, school administration, and funding for elementary and secondary schools. However, despite this local control, there is still a general pattern or guiding principles that the federal government influences, mainly around funding accountability and efforts to improve education quality. The federal role is limited but important, especially when it comes to ensuring resources are used effectively and that standards are maintained. One of the core principles of the U.S. education system is that public schooling is free. Schools recycle resources through things like shared facilities and transportation, and there's no uniform curriculum nationwide. What's learned in one state might differ from another. In elementary schools, teachers often teach all subjects, which is quite different from the more specialized approach seen elsewhere. Also, there are programs to support low-income students, such as reduced-price breakfast and lunch at school, to help address economic disparities. Another important aspect is the free school bus service, which helps ensure students can access education regardless of their economic background or transportation issues. Overall, the U.S. education system today remains highly decentralized, with local control playing a major role, but with federal influences guiding certain standards and funding priorities. It's a system designed to be flexible and community-driven, while still aiming to provide equal opportunities through free public education and support programs. The public school system in the U.S. has certainly seen improvements, especially with the advancement of technology and the adoption of new teaching methods. These innovations have helped make learning more engaging and accessible for students across the country. One significant policy that was introduced to address long-standing issues is No Child Left Behind, or NCLB, which was enacted by President George Bush in 2002. The goal was to close the achievement gap between students from different socioeconomic backgrounds, particularly between the wealthy and the poor. This policy represented a federal effort, funded by taxpayers, to ensure that all students received a quality education. Under NCLB, schools are monitored closely, and there's a strong emphasis on teacher training and support programs aimed at improving assessment practices. Schools are also required to participate in outcome-based assessments, which serve as benchmarks for measuring academic performance. These assessments help identify areas where schools need to improve and ensure accountability across the system. However, despite these efforts, there are still notable challenges. Violence and substance abuse in schools remain concerns, impacting the safety and learning environment. Additionally, opportunities for upward mobility are often limited for some students, and inequalities persist across different regions and communities. To address some of these issues, police are stationed in problematic schools to maintain safety. Overall, the U.S. education system today continues to evolve, balancing progress with ongoing challenges, all while striving to provide equitable and effective education for every student. Let's take a look at some of the key certificates that are recognized in the U.S. education system, such as the High School Diploma and the GED certificate. These are essential for demonstrating that a student has met the basic educational standards. The Disability Act of 2004 is a crucial piece of legislation that prohibits discrimination against students with disabilities. It ensures that children with disabilities can attend regular schools and receive the necessary support, such as appropriate aids and trained teachers, to help them succeed. In terms of instruction, English is the primary mode used across schools, but the system also emphasizes high parental involvement. Engaged parents play a vital role in supporting their children's education and fostering a positive learning environment. Schools often sponsor extracurricular activities to keep students engaged and away from negative social influences. These activities are designed to promote well-rounded development and social skills. The curriculum covers a wide range of subjects, including maths, English, foreign languages, social studies, science, arts, and computer science. This diverse curriculum aims to prepare students for various future opportunities. Assessments, such as examinations and tests, are conducted regularly to ensure students meet the stipulated academic standards. These evaluations are fundamental in measuring progress and maintaining quality education. Overall, the U.S. education system today strives to be inclusive, comprehensive, and supportive of all students' needs, preparing them for a successful future. In 2005, there were about 54 million students enrolled in K-12 schools across the United States, with a high attendance rate of around 98%, and approximately 85% of those students successfully completing their studies. When we look at higher education, roughly 17 million students were enrolled in universities and colleges, which accounts for about 27% of the student population. The country has a vast network of educational institutions, including approximately 96,000 public schools and around 29,000 private schools. It's interesting to note that private schools, which include religious and independent entities, account for about 12% of school attendance. Additionally, homeschooling is also recognized as a form of private schooling, representing about 2% of students. These figures give us a snapshot of how diverse and widespread the education system is in the U.S., and understanding this landscape helps us see the broader context of educational access, quality, and the choices families make. All of these points tie back to our overall discussion on how education systems shape opportunities and outcomes across the country. Let's take a closer look at the American education system's schooling structure. Starting from the bottom, we have kindergarten, also known as early childhood education, for children ages 3 to 5, focusing on pre-kindergarten learning experiences. Moving up, elementary school is for ages 6 to 11, covering grades 2 through 5. This is where foundational skills in reading, writing, and math are developed. Next is middle school, which is also compulsory, for students aged 11 to 14, typically grades 6 to 8. This stage prepares students for high school and introduces more advanced subjects. Then we have high school, for ages 14 to 18, encompassing grades 9 through 12, where students complete their secondary education. Finally, at the post-secondary level, students can attend university or college, pursuing a variety of degrees such as bachelor's, associate's, master's, or even a doctorate. This structure is designed to guide students through a clear educational pathway, building skills step by step, and preparing them for higher education or the workforce. Understanding this progression helps us appreciate how the American education system organizes learning at different stages of a person's life. Let's take a closer look at the structure of education in the USA. As you can see, it's quite a layered system designed to serve learners at different stages of life. It all begins with the preschool or early childhood education, which prepares young children for the formal school environment. Then, students move into elementary school, where they acquire foundational skills like reading, writing, and math. From there, they progress to middle and high school, where the curriculum becomes more specialized and diverse, helping students explore different interests and prepare for higher education or careers. After high school, many students attend colleges or universities, which offer undergraduate and graduate programs across a wide range of fields. There's also a significant emphasis on technical and vocational education, providing practical skills for specific trades. Overall, this structure is designed to be flexible and inclusive, aiming to meet the educational needs of a diverse population and support lifelong learning. Connecting this back to the broader theme, it highlights how the U.S. system balances foundational education with opportunities for advanced learning and skill development. Let's take a look at teacher training in the U.S. This is a crucial aspect because well-trained teachers are the backbone of effective education. We'll explore how teachers are prepared, what their training entails, and how it impacts student outcomes. Next, we'll examine teacher-learner ratios. This refers to the number of students per teacher, which directly influences the quality of education. Lower ratios typically allow for more individual attention and better learning experiences. Then, we'll discuss inclusive education. This is about ensuring that all students, regardless of their abilities or backgrounds, have access to quality learning opportunities. Inclusive education promotes diversity and equity within the classroom. So, why are these points important? Because they all connect to the broader goal of improving educational quality and equity. Find out more about how these elements are implemented and their effects in the U.S. This will give us valuable insights into effective educational practices and how they might be adapted elsewhere. Now, let's take a closer look at the comparison between the education systems of South Africa and the United States. As you can see in the table, there are some key differences and similarities worth highlighting. Starting with the U.S., Their education system is generally more structured around a K-12 model, with a strong emphasis on standardized testing and a wide variety of extracurricular activities. This often leads to a more uniform experience across schools, but it can also mean less flexibility in curriculum choices. In contrast, South Africa's education system faces different challenges and opportunities. It has a more diverse and complex structure, owing to its history and socioeconomic disparities. Access to quality education can vary significantly depending on the region, which impacts overall outcomes. When comparing the two, it's important to recognize that while the U.S. benefits from extensive resources and infrastructure, South Africa is working toward improving access and quality for its learners. Connecting this to our broader theme of educational development, these differences highlight the importance of context-specific approaches. Tailoring strategies to local needs can make a significant difference in outcomes, whether that's through policy reform, resource allocation, or community engagement. So, understanding these key distinctions helps us appreciate the unique challenges and opportunities each country faces in achieving equitable and effective education systems. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide.